The prayer that brings divine change. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, hidden method. Don't scroll, this message might be the one that changes the way you pray forever. Everyone asks Allah for change, but few know the prayer that truly transforms destiny. It's not a prayer of words, it's a prayer of alignment. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, discovered it in the deepest moments of his life, in darkness, betrayal, and silence. When everything was taken from him, he didn't ask for escape, he asked for understanding. And that's the difference between ordinary prayer and divine prayer. Ordinary prayer asks Allah to change your life. Divine prayer asks Allah to change you. In the well, Yusuf didn't cry, "Why me?" He whispered, "My Lord is with me." In the prison, he didn't ask to be freed, he prayed, "My Lord, grant me wisdom and teach me the meaning of things." That was the hidden method. He wasn't asking for comfort, he was asking for clarity. He didn't seek an easier path, he sought a higher purpose. That's why Allah raised him from a forgotten prisoner to a ruler of nations. Because his prayer wasn't reaction, it was revelation. Ibn Arabi said, when you ask for change through surrender, the whole creation begins to move for you. That's the essence of Yusuf's method. True prayer isn't begging for miracles, it's becoming worthy of them. It's when your dua stops being a list of wants and becomes a declaration of trust. When you stop saying, "Ya Allah, give me what I want," and start saying, "Ya Allah, make me who you want." That's when everything shifts. So if you feel stuck, lost, or unheard, remember this: Allah may not be changing your situation because He's using it to change you. The moment your prayer becomes surrender, divine change begins. Because the real power of prayer isn't in what you say, it's in what you're willing to let go of while saying it. That's Yusuf's secret, the prayer that doesn't just reach the heavens but brings heaven's light down into your heart. And when you begin to pray like that, not from impatience, but from surrender, something unseen starts to move around you. The same struggles that once felt like walls start to turn into doors. You begin to sense that Allah is not delaying, He's designing. That's the hidden rhythm Yusuf, Alayhissalom, lived by. Every moment of waiting was preparation, every silence was protection, every setback was placement. His prayer didn't change his life instantly, but it changed the way he saw it, and that changed everything. Ibn Arabi wrote, when the servant's heart aligns with the divine will, his prayer becomes creation itself. That's what Yusuf achieved. His dua was not a wish, it was participation in destiny. When he prayed, "My Lord, you are the originator of the heavens and the earth," it wasn't just praise, it was surrender. He was saying, "You created me for a reason, and I trust that reason, even when I can't see it." That's what made his prayer powerful. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And that's what divine change feels like, quiet but unstoppable. You wake up one day, and the bitterness that once lived in your heart is gone. The people who hurt you no longer have power over your peace. You begin to forgive without struggle, to smile without reason, to feel light even when life is heavy. It's not that your problems disappeared, it's that your prayer turned you into someone they can no longer defeat. That's the hidden method Yusuf, Alayhissalom, taught without words. Stop asking Allah to remove the pain, and start asking Him to reveal the purpose. Because when your prayer transforms from request to trust, Allah transforms your entire story. And what once looked like loss becomes the exact path that leads you home. And when you live in that state of trust, your entire connection with Allah deepens. You no longer pray only when you're desperate, you pray because you love being near Him. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, reached that point. His prayer was no longer a cry for help, it was a song of surrender. Even when he stood in the darkness of the well, or behind the walls of a prison, he was never alone, because his heart had already found its way back to Allah. That is divine change, When you stop seeing your hardship as punishment and start seeing it as a private conversation between you and your Creator. Ibn Arabi said, "The one who prays without expectation will witness what no eye has seen." That means the moment you pray not to control destiny but to connect with Allah, the impossible starts to shift. You begin to notice His mercy in the smallest things, the timing of a meeting, the comfort in a stranger's smile, the peace that suddenly settles in your heart for no reason at all. That's how you know change has begun, quietly, gently, without force. Divine change isn't dramatic. It doesn't always look like miracles, sometimes it's simply the absence of restlessness. You stop fighting with life, and life stops fighting you. Yusuf's heart was transformed before his circumstances were. He became patient in the well, wise in prison, and grateful in power. His story was never about escaping pain, it was about becoming unshakable through it. That's the hidden method. Pray not for life to bend to your will, but for your will to bend toward Allah's. When that happens, the entire world starts aligning in your favor. Doors open. Burdens lift. People change. But most importantly, you change. And that's the real miracle of prayer, not that it gives you what you want, but that it makes you who Allah always intended you to be. And as you keep praying like that, from a place of surrender instead of control, you begin to feel the transformation taking root in your heart. The same trials that once terrified you now bring calm. The same wounds that once bled now glow. You begin to recognize that Allah was never delaying your blessings, He was maturing your soul to be ready for them. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, understood that divine change doesn't come through resistance, it comes through acceptance. He didn't fight the prison, he grew inside it. He didn't rush his freedom, he waited until Allah's wisdom unfolded. That's the difference between waiting in pain and waiting with peace. Ibn Arabi said, "When the heart bows before the decree bows before the heart." It means when you truly accept Allah's timing, everything begins to align effortlessly. You don't chase anymore, what's meant for you starts finding you. That's how Yusuf was elevated from prisoner to ruler without striving for power. He didn't beg for position, he became ready for it through prayer. His prayer refined his patience, deepened his insight, and purified his intentions until the world itself was moved to honor him. You start to feel that same energy when your prayers shift from wanting to be seen to wanting to see Allah's hand in everything. You no longer ask, "When will this change?" You ask, "What is this teaching me?" And the moment you do, the lesson appears, and the storm softens. Your dua becomes lighter, gentler, a quiet "Ya Allah, if this is where you've placed me, then let me find you here." That's when divine change truly happens. It's not a lightning strike, it's a sunrise. Slow, steady, unstoppable. The pain fades into purpose. The confusion turns into clarity. And before you even notice, the very thing that once broke you becomes the reason you feel closest to Allah. Because the prayer that brings divine change isn't about asking for miracles, it's about becoming one. And when that light finally settles in your heart, you realize that divine change was never something that arrived from the outside, it was something that bloomed quietly within you. You begin to live like Yusuf, Alayhissalom, did, with serenity in the middle of uncertainty, with gratitude even when surrounded by loss. He didn't wait for life to get better to be thankful, he thanked Allah because he knew everything, even hardship, was already mercy in disguise. That is the secret that most people never reach, that peace doesn't come after change, it is the change. Ibn Arabi said, "When the servant becomes content with what Allah chooses, he enters a garden even before paradise." And that garden is peace. It's when your soul stops struggling against what is and starts breathing with what Allah decreed. That's the hidden method of divine prayer, not repetition. Not formality, but surrender so deep that it changes your very energy. You start attracting ease, wisdom, and compassion because your heart has aligned with divine flow. You stop praying for results and start praying for remembrance. You stop asking why me and start saying use me, Ya Allah. And in that shift, everything around you begins to unfold differently. Doors open without knocking. The people meant for you return without being chased. What you lost gets replaced with something purer. But even if nothing changes on the outside, you no longer mind, because the real transformation already happened inside you. That's when you understand what Yusuf, Alayhissalom, knew all along, that the greatest prayer is not the one that asks, but the one that accepts. It's not about changing fate, it's about stepping into it with faith. The same moment you stop fighting Allah's plan, you begin to feel it carrying you. You realize every delay was preparation, every fall was protection, every heartbreak was redirection. And now, when you raise your hands and whisper, Ya Allah, I trust you completely, you feel the world quiet down, because your heart has finally caught up to His mercy. And when your heart finally catches up to His mercy, you begin to walk through life differently, slower, softer, aware that every step is guided. You stop chasing what's meant to be yours, because you trust that what's written will never miss you. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, lived that truth, even in the lowest moments. He never questioned the author of his story. He didn't need to understand every chapter, he just needed to stay faithful in it. That's what divine change really is, not the rewriting of your destiny, but your awakening to the perfection already written. Ibn Arabi said, when you surrender to Allah's wisdom, your destiny begins to serve you instead of test you. That's the hidden power of surrender. It doesn't remove your challenges, it changes your position in them. You no longer stand as a victim of pain, but as a witness to purpose. You see meaning in what once made no sense. You see mercy where there used to be fear. And suddenly, you find peace not because life got easier, but because you finally stopped fighting what was meant to teach you. Your prayers start sounding different now. They're no longer filled with desperation, they're filled with gratitude. You say Alhamdulillah not when things go your way, but because you've realized every way leads to Him. You stop asking for less pain and start asking for more faith. You stop praying for the path to be smooth and start praying for the strength to walk it with grace. That's the transformation Yusuf found in the well, in the prison, and in the palace, that every space becomes sacred when the heart is in sujud. And one day, without realizing, you wake up changed. You don't crave control anymore, you crave closeness. You don't fear the unknown anymore, you see it as Allah's invitation to trust Him deeper. That's when divine change completes its circle, when you stop asking Allah to move mountains and simply ask Him to move your heart. And when your heart moves, everything else follows. And as that movement happens within you, life starts to flow in a way it never did before. You no longer push against what's written, you walk with it. Every morning feels like a conversation with Allah, every test like a message from Him. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, reached that state. He no longer saw pain as separation from Allah but as closeness in disguise. When he was thrown into the well, Allah was there. When he was sold as a slave, Allah was there. When he ruled over Egypt, Allah was still there. The situation changed, but the presence remained, and that's the essence of divine change. It's not about where you are, it's about who you are with. Ibn Arabi said, the servant who sees Allah in every state has already entered eternity. And that's what your prayer begins to feel like now, timeless. It no longer depends on outcomes, victories, or relief. You pray because your soul recognizes its source. You find yourself whispering Ya Allah in quiet moments, not to ask for anything, but simply to remember. You start living with that sacred stillness, a peace that doesn't need proof, a joy that doesn't depend on circumstance. That's when divine change shows its true face. It's not thunder or lightning, it's light that quietly fills the heart until there's no room left for fear. The same pain that once kept you awake now puts you to peace. The same story that once made you cry now makes you smile. You look back at everything that broke you and whisper, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have found this. And that's how you know your prayer worked, not because your world changed, but because you did. You became like Yusuf, patient in darkness, humble in success, content in every chapter. The prayer that brings divine change isn't about asking Allah to fix your life, it's about allowing Him to fix your heart. And when that heart finally bows in full surrender, you realize the change you were waiting for has already begun, and it was divine all along. And when you finally live with that awareness that Allah was in every chapter, guiding even what you didn't understand, your entire soul softens. The prayer that once came from fear now flows from love. You don't bow because you must, you bow because your heart can't stand being far from Him. That's the highest state of worship, the prayer that brings divine change until even silence feels like dhikr. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, reached that state. His heart was no longer asking for outcomes, it was resting in the one who writes them. That's why everything he touched turned to peace, because his prayer was not about changing destiny, but about aligning with it. Ibn Arabi said, when the lover finds peace in the will of the beloved, the whole universe prays with him. That's what happens when your heart surrenders completely. You start seeing prayer everywhere, in the wind, in the sunrise, in your patience, in your breath. Every moment becomes worship because every heartbeat remembers. You begin to understand that divine change isn't something Allah gives to you, it's something He awakens within you. And one day, when you stand in prayer, hands raised, eyes softened, whispering, Ya Allah, whatever you choose for me is enough, you'll feel it, that weight lifting, that calm descending. You'll realize you don't need signs anymore, you are the sign. You've become the living proof that Allah transforms those who truly surrender. Because divine change doesn't start in the world around you, it starts in the heart that finally bows in complete trust. And that's where it ends, not in noise, but in stillness. You realize that the greatest transformation doesn't happen when life changes around you, but when something shifts quietly inside your soul. The prayer that brings divine change is not loud, not desperate, it's steady, trusting, and surrendered. Yusuf, Alayhissalom, prayed that way, and Allah turned his pain into power, his loneliness into leadership, his wounds into wisdom. Ibn Arabi said, when the servant no longer asks to be changed, but to be used, divine will begins to act through him. And that's the moment you reach, when you stop asking when will it happen, and start whispering whatever you will, Ya Allah, let it happen through me. You become part of His plan instead of resisting it. That's when everything begins to move, the doors you couldn't open start to unlock, not because you pushed harder, but because you finally stopped pushing. Now, every prayer feels different. You no longer speak to be heard, you speak because you're already being held. You no longer ask for outcomes, you ask for alignment. You no longer search for peace, you've become it. And as you lift your hands one last time, whispering Alhamdulillah for everything, you feel what Yusuf felt when his story came full circle, a peace so deep it silences everything else. Because the prayer that brings divine change isn't the one that changes your life, it's the one that changes you, until your heart beats in rhythm with the will of Allah. And once you reach that, nothing in this world can shake you again.